There are two conversations about money that so many actors just refuse to have, and I want to have both of them today. The first one is a conversation about struggle, about debt, about not being able to afford shooting your headshots that are going to change your positioning that your agent has been asking for months, or about needing a booking not because you love the project or because it's really going to move your career forward, but because your rent depends on it. Actors will talk about rejection and dry spells and self tapes and bad reps and the unfairness of the industry all day. But nobody wants to say out loud, I am broke and I don't know how to fix it. That one stays quiet because that one carries a lot of shame. So I'll go first. There was a time in my career where I was over $100,000 in debt, mostly credit card debt, six figures of debt. I had left a relatively high paying corporate job to pursue acting. My income went to basically zero. I got divorced. I started a business on credit cards because I had great credit. And before I knew it, I was in a hole that felt like I was never going to be able to climb out of it. And if I'm honest, I carried a lot of shame about that for years. But there is the second silence that I think is just as damaging. And nobody talks about this one either. It's the silence around wanting to make money, around wanting to make a lot of money as an actor. Because somewhere along the way, the creative community has absorbed this belief that wanting to make money, wanting to earn well from your art makes you less of an artist, that real artists don't care about money. That if you say out loud, I want a career that earns me at least six figures, people are going to look at you sideways. They're going to call you delusional. They're going to say you're in it for the wrong reasons and that you're just being ridiculous. Clip that. And I want to push back on that really directly today. Actors can earn a lot of money. I know we're all hearing that it's so much harder for actors to earn a living wage right now. Actors can earn a lot of money, and not just A-listers. Working actors at every level are earning real professional income. Series regulars, recurring guest stars, people who have a lot of commercials, voiceover artists, actors with residual income who have shows in syndication. This is a profession that pays. And it can pay well when you're positioned correctly and you're building your career strategically. So why not us? Why not you? You're not being delusional for thinking that that's possible. So the idea that wanting to earn well from acting is somehow crass or delusional is one of the most toxic beliefs in our community. And I think it keeps us broke, it keeps us ashamed, and it keeps us making decisions from a place of scarcity instead of a place of power. So today we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about the shame, we're going to talk about the desire, we're going to talk about the practical reality because there are some shifting practical realities for sure. And we're going to talk about what changes when you start treating your financial life as a career issue instead of a separate problem that you'll deal with later. This is episode 19 of Powerhouse Conversations, the actor's money conversation that nobody wants to have. So let's get into it. So I want to start by naming a pattern that I've lived in personally and that I see actors in constantly. I call it the Prince Charming trap because, and this is borrowed from a term used by a personal finance guru. Her name is Barbara Stanny. Actually, her last name is different now because she got remarried, but I can't remember her current last name. Anyway, look up Barbara Stanny and you'll find it. Anyway, the Prince Charming trap goes like this. You're financially stressed, things are really tight, and somewhere in the back of your mind, there's this story running that sounds like, once I book this job, once I book that national commercial, pay it all off. Once I finally get my series regular, everything's going to change. The story is once I make it, the money problem goes away. So you charge things on credit cards, you defer hard financial decisions, you don't bother building a budget or a spending plan, I like to call it, because it feels pointless when you're about to have a breakthrough anyway. And every month that breakthrough doesn't come, the debt gets a little deeper and the shame gets a little heavier. Hi, Nadine. I did this for years. Subconsciously, I was waiting for a booking or some sort of amazing financial success in my business, maybe as well, to rescue me from all of my debt and the financial situation that I was in. And what I eventually realized is that I was treating that future acting job like a Prince Charming, like some extreme event was just going to sweep in and solve everything that I needed to be thinking about solving myself and that I needed to be developing systems for. And this is the thing that makes that trap so dangerous. When the booking does come, it doesn't fix the underlying problem. So I've watched actors book, say, a national that ran for a while. They deposit a few $12,000 checks. And then a year later, after the commercial stops running, they're broke because they never built the systems to manage the money. They just got a windfall and they spent it the way they always spent money, which is without a plan. Clip that. So, what's the exit from this trap? How do we avoid this? First of all, we have to make peace with the fact that an actor's income is sporadic. That is not a flaw. That is the nature of our profession. And by the way, plenty of professionals are in sporadic income. Freelancers, consultants, entrepreneurs, small business owners, lots of different people, types of professions. They all deal with this. The money comes in waves instead of steady paychecks. And the ones who thrive in this system are not the ones who earn the most necessarily. They're the ones who have the systems for managing that irregular income. So that's what we're going to build today. Not a fantasy about the booking that's going to just change everything. A real system that works with the ways that actors actually earn. So before I get into the practical stuff, I want to spend a few minutes on something I think is really important. And that is that your relationship with money is not separate from your acting career. It is directly affecting your career in ways you might not even realize. Here's how. When you are financially stressed, you take survival jobs that drain you. You may be bartending until 2 a.m. and then trying to prep a self-tape the next morning and having no energy for that. Or you're working 60 hours a week at a job that technically pays the bills, but leaves you with zero time or bandwidth for building your career, right? Maybe you have a job that you can't even tell your boss that you're an actor because they're going to have a problem with it. So your financial situation is really dictating how much energy you have for the thing you actually want to be doing. Also, when you're financially stressed, you can't invest in the things that would move your career forward. So your headshots get pushed another 6 months. The coaching that would sharpen your auditions feels like a luxury instead of something that you actually need to book more work. The casting director workshop that could build a key relationship is like, oh, that's $100 I don't have. So every one of those deferred investments is a deferred opportunity. Clip that. When you're financially stressed, you say yes to projects that aren't aligned because you need the check. You stay with the rep who isn't working because you're afraid the transition period is going to mean you can't get any auditions and you can't afford no auditions right now. Money stress makes your career decisions reactive instead of strategic. And also, when you are financially desperate, you bring that energy into your audition opportunities. People can read that. Even if you're not in the same room, even from a self-tape. I don't care how good of an actor you are. When you need the booking to pay the rent, there's this tension in your body. People can read it in your energy. It reads differently than an actor who walks in or appears on the tape relaxed, creatively free. So casting can feel that, producers can feel that. They might not be able to name it, but they can feel it. The other thing, and I think this really applied to me, is before you create a container to earn more money as an actor, energetically, that money does not come. Before you are able to be a good steward of the money that you earn, it's going to be really more difficult for you to earn that money. So this is not a side conversation. This is not go fix your finances and then come back to your career. Your finances and your career are the same conversation. And until you address the money piece, it's going to keep showing up in your auditions, in your decisions, and in your career momentum. So now I want to address another thing that I hear from actors all the time, and I think it holds a lot of us back. When we spend money on our career, on getting headshots or shooting a reel or on coaching or on a community like The Table, casting director workshops, producing, a lot of times actors will think of it as a personal expense, right? Like it's something they're spending on themselves, almost like it's a luxury. I've had people say, oh, God, I'm taking money away from my family by doing this, right? And when money is tight, those are the first things that get cut usually. So I want to just reframe that. If you are pursuing acting as a career, you are running a business. You are the product, you are the marketing department, you are the sales team, you are the CEO. And that money that you spend on headshots and coaching and training and community and strategic development, it's not a personal indulgence. This is the business expense. I mean, even the government thinks of it as a business expense. It's an investment in the asset that generates your income, which is you. No business would say, well, we can't afford marketing this quarter, so we'll just hope the customers find us. No business would say, we can't really afford to update our product packaging, so we're going to keep using the old version even though no one's buying it, right? But actors say this all the time. We defer the investments that would make us more bookable because we're thinking about them as personal spending rather than business spending. Clip that. And I want to connect this to what we talked about at the top. Inside my community, the goal is to create professional income as actors. Real income, career income. This is not a hobby club. This is not group therapy for people who like to act. This is a professional development community where actors are building businesses that earn money. When you invest in your career strategically, that investment is supposed to come back to you in the form of bookings, relationships, income. That is the whole point. And actors who treat their career spending as a business investment make different decisions than the actors who treat it like a personal luxury item or something. They invest more strategically, they track their return on investment, and they tend to build careers that actually pay. Okay, so I want to start to get practical here. And if, as I'm watching, you have a question, let me know. Hi, I see some of you are here live. Everything I've been saying is useless if you don't have a clear picture of your actual financial situation. And a lot of actors don't. So basically, a lot of us are walking around with this vague sense of financial stress, this kind of background hum of, I don't have enough money, that kind of colors everything, but it's not super specific. And the problem with vague stress is that you cannot solve it. You can't make a plan around a vague feeling. You can only make a plan around a number. So we're going to get that number. We're going to get that number. I think of it, it's not my term, but I call it your monthly nut. It's the total amount of money that you need every month to take care of yourself and your career. And calculating it is simpler than you think, probably. So we're just going to add up your housing costs, your utilities, any debt payments you're making, your groceries, your transportation, your insurance, entertainment, career expenses. And yes, those count because this is the business. And then Add a small amount for savings, even if it's just 1%, even if it's just $10 a month. Start the habit of setting aside money for future you. So that total is your monthly nut. That's the number you need to hit every month to cover your life and your career. So when I did this exercise for the first time, there were a couple of things that happened. One was that the number was actually smaller than I expected. It was like, oh, okay. And it wasn't small by any means. It's expensive to live in LA and blah, blah, blah. But it was smaller than the vague, overwhelming feeling that I had of I can never make enough money to support myself. And also, having that real number made the problem feel solvable for the first time. So instead of this giant kind of amorphous stress, it was a specific target. And I can plan for a specific target, or I can think about how I can attack that, right? So I worked with a financial advisor, another business income, right? Another business expense, rather, who recommended putting all your income into one account and having that account pay your monthly nut amount every month, kind of like a salary. And any excess stays in that account as a buffer for the slower months, right? And that way you're beginning to start to smooth out that sporadic income thing that comes from being an actor, and you're not riding the emotional roller coaster of like, I have months where I have so much money, and then I have months where I have no money, right? So calculate your monthly nut this week, and that'll be the starting point for everything else that we're talking about. Clip that. So now I want to expand beyond just like survival, because if all we're doing is covering our monthly nut, we're still living in scarcity, right? It's organized scarcity, but that's not really the goal. The goal is to build a life you actually want, not someday, but now. Not waiting for, some magical time when you're being offered huge studio movies and a series regular. No, we want to build a life we actually want right now. And yes, that is possible. So I want you to think about what your dream life actually costs. Not a fantasy, a real number. What does your ideal living situation cost? What about travel? How much would you like to be investing in self-development and career goal growth? What about self-care? I want to get facials, right? What about the ability to give generously to causes that you believe in? What about hiring help so you have more time for your creative work? What about hiring someone to help you with childcare? What about private schools for your kid, right? Whatever that is. One of my friends once told me that he really believed that actors needed to live really frugally until they make it. And I looked at him and I was like, no, absolutely not. Am I never supposed to take a vacation? Am I not supposed to live in a place that I love? Am I not supposed to buy myself flowers all the time? You may notice that I love flowers. And so I want to look at beauty around me. Am I supposed to put my whole life on hold until I reach some imaginary moment where I've made it? And what does that even mean? What does it even mean to make it? What amount of money will finally be enough for me to start living? No. We are going to figure out what the life you want actually costs right now, and then we're going to figure out how to earn that. Clip that. So take your monthly nut and then add the monthly cost of the upgrades that would bring your life into alignment with your values. Maybe it's a vacation every year. So you divide the annual cost by 12 and you add that to your monthly number. Maybe it's getting your hair done twice a month. Maybe it's a membership to a gym that makes you feel good. I have a membership to a luxury gym. It's the best thing I ever invested in, ever. Whatever it is, if it aligns with your values and it contributes to you showing up as the fullest version of yourself, put a number on it. That gap between your monthly nut and what I call your powerhouse vision, that's your income growth goal. And that goal is so much more motivating than I need to stop being broke. It gives you something to build toward instead of something to run from. So I teach something in my community at the table called the flexible income audit, because for a lot of actors, the survival job is actually kind of a career obstacle that they've never really evaluated clearly. So this is kind of a series of questions designed to help you figure out whether your current income source is actually supporting your career or kind of draining you and killing your career. Okay. So I don't have time to go into the full thing right now, but a few things, you know, obviously your income needs to reliably cover your monthly nut plus some savings, because if it doesn't, you're going to constantly be in crisis mode. And that is the enemy of strategic thinking. Your your employer needs to know that you're an actor and at least be neutral about it. If you're hiding your career from your boss, there's a secondary cost for that, because energetically, you're living a divided life and that division does take a toll. You need to be able to take up to 2 weeks off to shoot a project with a few days' notice, right? If booking a job would mean you're going to lose your income source, that's a problem, because in the back of your mind, you have competing objectives there. You can't pursue a career where the goal is to book work if booking work is going to get you fired, right? So we've got to resolve some of these things. And, you know, sure, we are working toward building our primary income from acting. But even for the actors you can think of who are making the most money, most of them are doing other things as well. They have businesses, they have real estate, they have investments, they invest in companies, whatever it is. So we need to stop thinking about it as this is all I want to do, right? We can develop a more global picture of how our money comes in. So I want to close out with some habits that I think are important in changing relationships with money. These are things that I've adopted over the years. These aren't really financial strategies, but they're practices that can help move you out of avoidance and shame into awareness and feeling of sense of agency. So the first one is just look at your accounts every day, even when it's painful, even when you're afraid that there's going to be an overdraft there, especially when it's painful, because avoidance is what keeps the shame alive. And when I first started doing this, it was brutal. I did not want to see the numbers, but over time, the act of looking became normal. And once it was normal, it was just, ugh, it was so much different. It was so much different. I could actually start making decisions from awareness instead of from fear. The second one is to have a weekly money date, I call it. This is just a meeting with yourself where you sit down once a week and you look at what you spent, you look at what came in, you look at what needs to go out. If you have a partner, you can do it together. It is not always fun, let me tell you. But again, we are building the muscle of financial awareness, and that muscle is what keeps you from just sleepwalking into bad situations. Okay. I would also advise to take care of yourself during this time, especially if it's hard. Maybe you put on soothing music. Maybe you light a candle. Maybe you make yourself some nice warm tea or whatever you like to drink, whatever is comforting to you. Make it something that is associated with pleasure as well. The third thing is start to spend only on what aligns with your values, right? When you are very clear on your values, the spending decisions get simpler. When I started to get really clear on my values, I stopped going to Target and just buying random shit. If something doesn't bring you closer to the life you want, it probably doesn't need your money. And then we're going to release the shame. And this is the biggest one. Your financial situation does not define your talent or your worth. If you're in debt, you are not a failure. If you're earning less than you want to be, that's a solvable problem. That's not a verdict on who you are. The shame never helps you earn more. It just makes you avoid looking at the numbers, which makes everything worse, or at least that was my experience. Clip that. One of my favorite affirmations is, the more I relax, the more money I make. Because for me, one of the old beliefs that wasn't serving me was that you have to grind yourself into the ground to earn. You have to hustle yourself to death. And that is not true. The actors I've watched earn the most are not the frantic ones. They're not the ones whose nervous system is like on high alert. They're the most clear and honestly the most relaxed in their pursuit of it. So it's counterintuitive, but that's the truth. So everything that I talked about today, the monthly nut, the power player vision, powerhouse vision, the flexible income audit, you can start working on that this week. You have the framework for that. Inside the table, we treat your acting career like a business. We build monthly marketing plans. We audit your positioning. We build your circle of influence. And yes, we talk about money. That is a whole content area for us because financial stability is not separate from career strategy. It is the foundation that your career strategy is built on. We also focus on creating professional income as artists. This is not a hobby community. The goal is for the work that you're doing inside the table to directly translate into earning power. The investments that you make in your career are business expenses, and we need to treat them that way. So if you're ready to stop treating your finances and your acting career as two separate problems and start building them together, that's what the table is for. And the link is in the YouTube description. So if you have any questions, this is a place for that. I check the YouTube description. I'll take questions here on Instagram as well. So if you have any that you want to ask, let me know. What's on your mind? But here's what I want to leave you with. You are allowed to make a lot of money as an actor. That is not delusional. That is not crass. That is a professional goal in a profession that pays real money to the people who are prepared to receive it and who are positioned well. And you're allowed to invest in getting there. These are not luxuries. Coaching and strategic development and getting a reel produced. And these are all business expenses. You are building a business, so treat it like one. So I want you to know that you deserve both. You deserve the art, you deserve to feel fulfilled as an artist, and you also deserve the income. So just know that and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.